You were in the weeds yesterday.
Oh God, this thing, I forgot about this.
On X, Twitter, and you said something like very mild, like pretty like, I mean, fair about Brock Purdy, and just we're getting it from all. Can you tell people what happened, and then I'll ask you, or just give me your take on Brock Purdy defenders in general, super fans.
I really hate talking about this, but it's like it's gotten so out of hand. It's crazy. It reminds me of like back in the day when on your first streams when like you would go on Jimmy Garoppolo and you'd have Flav or whoever else just always in your mentions like every 39 seconds. This all I wrote about. Brock Purdy should not be lucratively extended. What does that mean? Don't pay him top of the market value. Don't put him in the Josh Allens. Don't put him in all these players. Don't make him like a top 6 to 8 paid quarterback. Don't fall. Oh, Dak Prescott's getting paid. Well, you know what? I don't care. That's a bad decision by the Cowboys. Don't do that. Be smarter. You're saying cash spending. Let's be smarter. He's coming off a down year. I'm not fully bought in yet. If he had a 2023 season in 2024 and better, sure, go ahead. But he didn't. He did not. Mm-hmm. If you extend him 45, even 50 a year, I'm not comfortable with 50, but if he did that, sure, why not? Don't do the 60 million annual. Don't give him 200 million guaranteed or even close to that. I like 170 guaranteed for his number. I don't like 200 or 190. And people ran with that and said, why do you think he's a terrible player? And I'm over there like, do I need glasses? Where did I say that? I do not understand the mildest of criticism or just any criticism of this guy. And people like Spidey senses, someone's talking about Purdy and it's not aligning with he's the GOAT. Yeah. Attack!
That's you don't think he's worth 60 million? So you're saying he's not as good as Trevor Lawrence? So you're saying he's not as good as Tua? So you're saying he's not as good as Dak?
People were saying
I'm also saying that Josh. I'm not saying Josh Allen's worse than Dak because Josh Allen makes less than Dak. I'm just saying that there are some awful, ridiculous quarterback contracts out there, and the Niners don't have to be giving out the next one.
Sorry, I don't want your team because I'm not a fan of any team. I'm sorry, I don't want your team to make what I believe would be a bad business decision. And maybe it's right. And maybe they ended up looking good in their favor. Sure, then I'll be like, damn, I ate that one for sure. But like, we can't. You honestly, like, I don't even care if people think he's worth that. I just think it's funny. It's like I damn near said he's the worst quarterback in the league. I remember when Mac Jones came and I was over here saying like, oh yeah, I wrote about he was going to be a target and they were going to sign him. And now it's like interesting because he's a contingency for a potential Purdy holdout. I don't think he's going to hold out. A potential Purdy holdout. And someone said like, I can't believe you think he's a worse player. Mac Jones is better. It's like, where did I say that? People, and it's always funny in these situations because as much as they want to say like us or you, whoever's talking about him, criticizing him, or we're negative, we only want to poo-poo on him. It's like, look, when I praise him, I don't hear nothing from you guys. When I say criticism, you guys come all in the woodwork, all in my line. And it's like, it's hilarious. It's like you guys feed into the negativity. You love the negativity. I don't. Right. I keep it both ways. If you look at my articles, it's both sides. I said he was an optimizing figure 2 years ago. And God forbid I start criticizing him like, oh, he had a bad game against the Browns. He did not. He was great. No, he sucked. He was bad. He was not good. He's not. He has bad games, even this past season. I do not think he had a bad season. I think he had a down season and regressed. Does not mean I think he was bad or terrible. He had bad games, bad stretches, bad moments. Ultimately, he wasn't great. I didn't like investing that money. So I just think it's hilarious to see people so up in arms cannot. And it's just like, I don't really remember it getting this bad for the Jimmy Garoppolo talk, man. To me, it's just funny. It's just funny to see people like that. And it's just like, just call me an effing idiot or something like that. Just do that. Say something like that, like you don't know what you're talking about, but don't say like, don't put words in my mouth. Don't change what I'm saying. That's the thing that's like gets a little annoying. It's like, I didn't say that. If you're going to call me an idiot or anything, I don't care about that, but at least do something that I talked about. Like people took that article I wrote, Grant, and just pretty much thought it was a smear campaign.
What I don't get with the Brock Purdy discussion is like his biggest defenders will act like last year didn't matter.
Yes.
As if he's like some 10-year vet and last year was just some outlier. It's like, hold on, man. He's only played 2 full seasons. One of them was really good. One of them really wasn't. So what are we talking about? I mean, how can you just say he's a great quarterback when and this is the Niners' issue. They've given out way too many of these contracts to dudes who've had like one great year. Bosa was one of them.
Debo.
Debo was one of them. Ayuk was one of them, essentially. Like I think it's okay in certain cases to take your time and acknowledge that you don't really know fully who the guy is yet. We've seen 2.5 years of Brock Purdy, but we don't know if he's more the guy in 2023 or the guy in 2024. It's hard to say. I don't know. Don't.
Yes. That's why I'm like, if the 49ers want to have him play on his deal or even a short-term deal, I'm for that, because like his last year was just like, that was a little scary. And the pushback could be he did it without he played without his stars. Like, yeah, that's exactly what it's gonna look like.
What do you think the future holds? Yeah.
I don't like look, I've never said he's a bad player. I think he's a solid player. I think he's a top 10 through 12, closer to 12 player, which is cool.
He might be the 12th best quarterback in the league. Exactly. That's pretty fair. Yeah.
Look, that means you could say more than half the teams would take him. Definitely. Yeah, they would. I just think it's just always the same thing about like the thing about putting words in your mouth. Like I didn't say that. Like it went from saying he's not worth this much money to like, I can't believe you don't think he should be extended. And then it started getting to like, well, if he was drafted in the second round, you would think he should get extended. Like, what the hell does his draft status from 3 years ago have to do with anything now? You mean to tell me because he was the last pick in the draft 3 years ago is why I do not believe, or why anyone doesn't believe he should be lucratively extended, and not because he had a down season last year? Like, that just blows my mind. Like, the moment you become a starter, the draft status, the moment he was a starter in 2023, his draft status went out the window. It didn't matter anymore. Now we're looking at you from a standard franchise starting quarterback. And right now, I don't know if he is one or if he isn't. I don't know. Like, again, if he had a similar season in 2023, I'd be like, oh, yeah, for sure. If you want to extend him top dollar, I still think probably that's a little expensive. But like, you know what? If you got to overpay a little bit, sure. But I think if you give him that contract now, I think that's a pretty vastly overpay that you're looking at.
And it's a bad precedent to set.
Yes.
Like, hey, man, you could come to the negotiating table off a pretty down year and miss the playoffs, and we'll pay you because you were good 1 year before that.
That was a pretty bad article. That was pretty much the point of the article. It's like, look, so we're gonna reward top dollar contract to a guy who came off a down year. Like, now it's like, shoot, if I'm I don't know, Jair Brown, I'm just like, hey, look, I can go get this extension. I wasn't great last year. You guys paid him out, but because you liked me as a rookie, whatever. I just think it's like, it's fascinating. The Purdy conversation is so fascinating. I want to see more from him because I see how good he can be when he's at his highs. But we saw last season how bad he can be at his lows, which was the Rams, Dolphins, Lions game, and a couple early games I couldn't forget. But especially those 3 ones are what come to mind for me. It's just insane. Like, you cannot criticize the guy, and it's going back to Jimmy Garoppolo, where it's like you guys are having this not mirage effect, but like stuck in the desert for days, and the first bottle of water you get is the Arrowhead water. Arrowhead water is disgusting, but it's good because you haven't drank water in forever, and you're in the heat. So it's all refreshing. It's like, no, I cherish this. I want it. That's my Brock Purdy. Like, it's just.
That's the other thing with his resume, too. People be like, well, look at what he's done in the playoffs. It's like, yeah, but look what Jimmy did in the playoffs with the same team, and Jimmy's not good. And yeah, Brock is definitely better than Jimmy, but you can't just throw his wins and losses in the playoffs at me and be like, boom, proof. Like, that's what the Raiders thought when they signed Jimmy, and they learned in a month and a half that it meant absolutely nothing. Terrible. Nothing. So I still see a guy that had one really good year, a nice half a year before that, and a year that was forgettable. I'd like to see one more before and I think from his perspective, hey man, if the best I can do is get some mid-level contract, let's talk next year because I'm gonna come back and kill it. I am the truth. It wasn't my fault last year. I'll prove it.
Yeah, I think that would be like some nice mentality.
That's what Lamar would do.
The 49ers have all the leverage too here in the first place. You know, like if you're like, again, I would say like if he goes out there, plays the final year of his deal, and plays as well as 2023 or better, whatever, he plays better than last year, I'd be like, cool. Now you feel comfortable paying him that top dollar because he went out there and he did it. He made sure last year was a blip. I would be like, yes, sign him. But he didn't have that type of season. And people throw around these numbers like he was 7th in EPA, whatever. Like, yeah, that's great. I'm sure his numbers to me like are not high or low to me. It's what I watched in some of his decision makings, the holding of the ball, and like it's all of a sudden his down season, everyone brings down the other players around him. They bring down the players around him. 2023, he's the reason why they got to the Super Bowl. He led them. No, he didn't lead them. He was a part of it. He factored into it. He didn't lead them. Did we not just forget about Christian McCaffrey and the other 5 freaking All-Pros? Like, you're disrespecting those other players? That's where I start getting like, what are you talking about? Like, don't say he led them. He factored into it. He played a role. He played a part. He was a reason. He was not the reason, because when you say he led them, he was the reason, right? So
Right.
and then last year the same thing. Like, oh, the offensive line was terrible. It was subpar. It wasn't great. Sure, they should upgrade there. They need more help there. But from what I see on Next Gen Stat, he had the 6th, 7th highest time to throw in the league. So he's holding the ball too long, and he had a top 10 pressure rate. So, okay, cool. So your offensive line did a good enough job, but you were holding the ball too long. You held the ball too long, and it aligns with other stats that he was one of the top players who would have air yards, attempt past the sticks. I know for a majority of the season, because he was looking for the big play. He was doing too much. He was thinking too much. His decision-making was really bad. That's my biggest gripe about him. His decision-making was too much. He was good with mobile. Overall, he had solid plays. I just feel like we need to hold him to a higher standard. And it's too much like of bringing down the bar. Like talking about his accomplishments. He's been to his playoff games. It's like, you know what? Like he never was great in most of these playoff games. You know, the first playoff game, Seattle, he was bad in the first half. He bounced back second half. Last year, Packers game, he wasn't great for most of that game. Detroit NFC Championship game, he threw a bad pick on their own side of the field to set up the Lions for a score. It's just, there's just a lot for me to still want to see from him. You know, like for me, be comfortable at that number, and for the 49ers to be a thriving football team, a perfectly thriving football team, an optimal one.